State of California, they projected that 20 years from now, 50% of all the power that's being generated will be consumed by IT equipment, which is a pretty scary situation when you look at all people, houses, lights, and they only get the other 50%. And if you looked at IT as a linear growth, then that would be the expectation that the power efficiency would offset the growth. But we're seeing the use of IT in almost all aspects of all businesses of all sizes just exploding, and so the growth of server and storage equipment is far outpacing any efficiencies that the power systems can bring.
A lot of data center managers are now looking at how efficiently they're cooling their data center, and the issue. I mean, we will read a lot in the press and at events about what cooling the data center means, but fundamentally it's about keeping the hot and cold air separate. So you supply cool air to cool the systems and you exhaust hot air. The problem with putting high density equipment into legacy data centers is that the hot and cold air mixes. So you have to supply an artificially large amount of cold air to compensate for the fact that it's been contaminated by the hot air.
At least in the United States, where that's really been the genesis of a lot of the green IT movement. It really starts with power efficiency. I mean, at least for most vendors in this business, power efficiency is what they characterize as being green. But it's a much bigger factor than that. We believe, the most power efficient systems in the business, in the industry. So that, by normal standards, would make us a green company. But we go quite a bit beyond that. Our density is so high relative to our competition. Density being how many servers you can get in a unit of area, or how much storage that you can populate in a unit area of floor space, is so much greater than any other technology or any other product in the industry that we actually can prevent data centers from being built, data centers from being expanded.
I think that the data center proposition for most large corporates is becoming a much more dominant part of their operational cost, and it's becoming more and more difficult for IT directors to modulate their spend on software licensing, on people, on real estate, and on energy, because the demand for IT is continuing to increase. I think the economic case now for investing capital into making data centers more efficient, or in buying more efficient IT systems, is becoming more and more viable. And I think that's what IT managers are starting to look at in detail.
I wouldn't be so harsh in that kind of a judgment. I think in the sense that we're really early in this. In the green a year ago was something people thought that would be a passing fad. It's clear that it is not. And so I think there's a sort of an early adoption of the concepts that IT directors are struggling with at this point in time. I think mostly they're focusing on power efficiency, which is a problem with
the data centers that our industry designed 10, 12, even 15 years ago were designed for densities of maybe 3 kilowatts per cabinet, maybe even up to 4 kilowatts per cabinet, and certainly the industry has moved on from that. Very few, and I think that there's been a lot of discussion about using byproduct hot air for various applications, but unfortunately people don't want to put data centers near places where you can reuse the byproduct hot air. So very few major data centers are being built beside hospitals or universities or apartment complexes. So 2 or 3 years ago, most data center managers, directors didn't understand the proportion of non-IT to IT power. We've now moved from not understanding it to understanding it, and hopefully in the coming 2 to 3 years we'll move to addressing it. And really benchmarking data centers, and we've seen the Green Grade and we've seen the EU Code of Conduct do this as well. Benchmarking data center performance will drive innovation. It will allow IT managers to pick the best of breed or the best approach to their energy consumption, rather than what we did 15 years ago.